So in this video, I want to talk about, once again, the death of Sam Foltz. I've made a ton of videos on this and how his death is in connection with a bunch of other interrelated stories in the news. I'll leave a link in the description of a playlist that I've been making in regards to this. I'll also leave the how-to gematria video so you understand why I'm coming up with the numbers and how. There's just a whole lot to re-explain and it'll take way too long. So anyway, last year I remembered Sam Foltz got hurt in the BYU game. He didn't play the next week and he came back against Miami. And Miami's super significant in the coding in regards to Teddy Bridgewater's injury. Teddy Bridgewater from Miami last year when Nebraska upset Michigan State that same weekend. He got knocked out by LaMarcus Joyner, who's also from Miami. We even had Dwayne Wade going to the Chicago Bulls. I talked about how he went to the Nebraska Cornhusker game. Dwayne Wade, connected to Miami. I even talked about how it's connected to Nebraska's first championship in 1971 when they beat LSU. Nebraska equals 71. They get their first championship in 1971. But they got that in Miami at the Orange Bowl. And think about Miami in regards to Cuba. A lot of Cubans end up going to Miami. So anyway, like I said, Sam Foltz got hurt in the BYU game, the one that Dwayne Wade attended. He didn't go to the next game. Then he came back during the Miami game. And in that Miami game, there was two players who got ejected for targeting. They were Bush and Carter, who played for Miami. And I thought, that's pretty interesting. That reminds me a lot of the presidents, Jimmy Carter, George Bush. Earlier in the year, I had even talked about the NASCAR racers, Kyle Busch and Kurt Busch, both being out. And they both got replaced by a guy with the name Reagan. It was Reagan Smith and David Reagan. And then, of course, the Bush, Reagan, Bush, Carter. It's some kind of weird puzzle that they're giving us. Anyway, when I looked up Jimmy Carter and George Bush Sr., I found out they were both born in the same year. George Bush, born in June. Jimmy Carter, born on October 1st. But they're born 112 days apart. And 112 is a big number in regards to the death of Sam Foltz. In gematria, his name equals 112. He died 1 month, 12 days before Nebraska's first game. Sam Foltz, even born on January 21st, which in most parts of the world they write it as 21/1, a lot like the backwards 112. He even died 211 days after the last Nebraska game that he played in the Foster Farms Bowl. There's a whole lot more to it as well. Dwayne Wade's wife, Gabrielle Monique Union, equals 112. Dwayne Wade now plays for the Chicago Bulls. Chicago Bulls equals 112. Also, in regards to the 1971 championship, LSU this year is in its 112th season, and they went into the game in Wisconsin when Les Miles, their coach, had 112 wins. And of course, Sam Foltz died in Wisconsin. There's a whole lot of stuff going back to Wisconsin. Colin Kaepernick, even from Milwaukee. That's where Dwayne Wade went to college. So anyway, moral of the story, it's just interesting that Sam Foltz would come back in that Miami game, which connects to Cuba, and then George Bush and Jimmy Carter are born 112 days apart. But also in the coding, I've mentioned a lot about the date of July 6th and how it connects back to the Alton Sterling Philando Castile stories. 7/6, also the same day that Dwayne Wade signed with the Chicago Bulls. Nebraska's coach, Mike Riley, is born on 7/6. Nebraska even went 6-7 last year. They fired Bo Pelini after 67 wins. A whole bunch of stuff in connection to it. But anyway, I went back and I looked up Jimmy Carter because I thought about Miami and the Cuba connection, and Jimmy Carter is actually... Obama was the last president to visit Cuba, but before that it was Jimmy Carter, who he wasn't the acting president, but he was still a president who went to Cuba. The last acting one before Obama was Calvin Coolidge. But anyway, I'll get into that as we move on. I noticed right off the bat, Jimmy Carter was the 76th governor of Georgia. And look when he was in office. January 12th, 1971. 112. Also, it was just after Nebraska won their first championship. Also, in regards to Cuba, Cuba's current constitution began in the year 76, the 55th day of 1976. I found that interesting just in regards to it. So anyway, Jimmy Carter was the last president to visit Cuba since Obama, but he wasn't the acting president, like I said. The last one to do that was Calvin Coolidge. It was 88 years before Obama went to Cuba. If you write out Calvin Coolidge's name, John Calvin Coolidge, it also equals 88. Even the headline said Obama embargo on Cuba will end on CNN, which equals 88 in Gematria. If you write out just Calvin Coolidge, it equals 127, which is interesting because Nebraska as a school is in its 127th season, but they've only been the Cornhuskers for 117 seasons. And of course, 117 I talked about a whole lot. The first game Dwayne Wade ever went to with Nebraska was on 9/5, the day that leaves 117 days in the year. He's born on January 17, a lot like 117. Last year, Nebraska upset Michigan State on 11-7, the same week that LSU lost its first game, same week Teddy Bridgewater got hurt. And the other guy who got hurt in the accident who died was Mike Sadler of Michigan State. That's why it sticks out in regards to Nebraska upsetting Michigan State on that day. Nebraska even scored 39 points, which is interesting to me because Jimmy Carter was the 39th president. Also, Coolidge in Gematria equals 43. Sam Foltz died 43 days before Nebraska beat Fresno State on their first game. Fresno State equals 43. Nebraska scored 43 points in that game. Nebraska has 43 conference championships right now. I even talked about how Nebraska is connected to the Civil War. Abraham Lincoln, Nebraska. Nebraska plays in the Sea of Red, which reminds us of Moses. Nebraska equals 71. Moses equals 71. The Ten Commandments equals 71. The word punt equals 71. Moses freed the slaves. Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. Anyway, in regards to 43, if you write out the word Civil War, it equals 43. Abe Lincoln born on the 43rd day of the year. He died 4 years, 3 days after the Civil War began. And while I'm on the 43 stuff, I thought I'd look at the 43rd president, George W. Bush. And I mean, look at this. Just so happened to be born on 7/6. His name in Gematria, George Bush, even equals 53, like Nebraska. And of course, him being in the Skull and Bones and the 9/11 attacks. And I've talked about Nebraska's defense connected a lot to Skull and Bones through the number 41. They even throw up the bones and whatnot. So I'll come back to him at the end of the video, but just wanted to point it out. He's the 43rd president, also born on 7/6, Anyway, in regards to Cuba and Sam Foltz, Cuba and Gematria equals 27, and Sam Foltz' number was number 27. Not sure if that's a super significant thing or not, but just wanted to point it out. Calvin Coolidge also, of course, born on the nation's independence, 7/4, which, the odds of that happening, there's 43 people who have been the president. 3 of the first 5 die on July 4th, and then we even have one that's born on July 4th. But whatever. 7/4 also normally the 185th day of the year. He died 185 days after his birthday. He also quit being the president in the year 1929, just before the stock market crash. Stock market crash equals 185. And in regards to right now, Donald John Trump also equals 185. World Trade Center equals 185. Calvin Coolidge also died age 60. Just like Teddy Roosevelt, I talked about the connections of Teddy Roosevelt to Teddy Bridgewater. Lincoln, Nebraska equals 60. Abraham Lincoln equals 60. Even if you write out tribe of Levi, it equals 60. Moses was in the tribe of Levi. Nebraska played in the Foster Farms Bowl last year in Levi Stadium. Think about Colin Kaepernick. The 49ers are even in their 71st season. Remember, Nebraska equals 71, Moses equals 71. And they play in the Levi Stadium, which is pretty interesting. And then tonight, they're opening their season against the Rams, the team that Teddy Bridgewater keeps getting hurt against and before. And think about Moses in regards to the ram, Aries the ram. He got mad about the golden calf. It's definitely going to be a symbolic year for San Francisco, whether they have a good or bad season. So anyway, in regards to Sam Foltz' death and this date of 9/19, and the reason that this 9/19 date is super significant is because that's when Pope Francis began his trip to the United States last year, and he went to Cuba on 9/19. This was also a day that YouTube has been foreshadowing to me by leaving by leaving weird comments on my videos, and also copyright claiming old videos at weird times, all linking back to the date of 9/19. 9/19 is the 262nd day of the year in a non-leap year. So Pope Francis went to Cuba that day. Then Obama went 26 weeks, 2 days later, a lot like 262. 262 days after this date right here, Hillary Clinton clinched the nomination. And if you write out Clinton equals 262 in Gematria. On CNN, the headline had Bernie Sanders with his arm up, and it said, "The struggle continues," that equals 262. 9/19, also the day that James Garfield, the assassinated president, died. He was shot on 7/2, and he died on 9/19. But he was shot at a train station. There's been all the Amtrak derailments, especially the one in Philadelphia, that was super connected to Pope Francis's visit. I mean, even think about LeBron James in the movie Trainwreck. LeBron James in Jewish Gematria equals 923. In the movie Trainwreck, Amy Schumer's character is 9 years old in the opening scene. The rest of the movie takes place 23 years later. We had the Philadelphia train wreck last year on May 12th that happened at 9:23 p.m. Pope Francis arrived in America on his 923rd day as Pope. He went to the White House at 9:23 on 9:23. So, just pointing out the significance of 9/19 and also how it connects to Pope Francis, and also a lot of the train symbolism that we had last year. Even Jared from Subway went to jail. Just tons of other train stories. And think about 9/19 just as a number, 919. It looks a lot like 91 and 19, or 91 and 91. And Jimmy Carter was born on October 1st, the day that leaves 91 days in the year. If you write out September 19th, it equals 91. And last year, I was talking a whole lot about how the number 91 was really significant in regards to death and elimination. I even talked about the actor from the movie Herbie the Love Bug, Dean Jones, dying. And he died on 9/1, and I talked about how it was connected to Nebraska probably having a bad season because he was in Herbie, Nebraska's mascot, Herbie Husker. Anyway, if you go from the death of Sam Foltz to 9/19 this year, a span of 1 month, 27 days, Nebraska's in its 127th season. Another reason Pope Francis's visit to the United States was so significant is that in Philadelphia, he gave a speech using Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address lectern, just once again connecting it back to that Civil War theme, Anyway, if you go from the date that Obama was in Cuba to the death of Sam Foltz, a span of 4 months, 3 days. Once again, like Civil War. March 20th, also the day that the war in Iraq came to an end. Even the date March 20th, 20/3, a lot like 203. There was a lot of 203 stuff that I was getting shown. Even I believe if you write out Obama murdered by ISIS, it equals 203. Just a lot of stuff like that. But also, when YouTube was leaving copyright claims and weird comments, they were pointing me towards 9/19 with the death of Omaha police officer Carrie Sue Orozco that equals 203. Copyright strike equals 203. I even talked about watching a cartoon, and it was something to do with Rocky, and it was 203. She was born on 9/19, and the last time that an Omaha police officer was killed like that in the line of duty was Jason Pratt, who died on 9/19, so it was her birthday. Just kind of interesting. And then all the other 91 stuff. Also, when you think of Cuba, it reminds us of the Cold War. If you write out Cold War in gematria, Cold War equals 76. Other interesting things in regards to Cuba and Calvin Coolidge and whatnot and presidents. Calvin Coolidge then stopped being the president in 1929, and then we got the only president from Iowa, Herbert Hoover. Iowa, the 29th state. Hoover becomes the president in 1929. Anyway, if you write out football equals 29. Once again, connecting it to the death of Sam Foltz and just football stories. If you write out the word Carter also equals 29. And there was a whole lot of 91 in regards to the Great Depression. The Great Depression equals 91, 1929. If you write that out, it equals 91. So just interesting, a lot of 91. I've talked about it in regards to bad things, and it's connected to Carter. Carter's connected to Cuba. Cuba's connected to Miami. I know it's so interrelated and it's a lot to take in. But I want to finish this video off. I just want to talk about George Bush, some of the connections I found with him. Well, actually, before I even get into that, his vice president, Dick Cheney, even from Lincoln, Nebraska. He was born in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I've talked about it, how it connected back to the death of Antonin Scalia and also a judge theme. Just tons of stuff going on with the story that's in my previous videos. And remember, if you write out Antonin in gematria, it equals 522. And Antonin Scalia died just after quail hunting, which reminded us of Dick Cheney shooting his friend or whatever when they were hunting. And it was exactly 522 weeks before Antonin Scalia died. And Antonin equals 522. A whole lot more in this story as well. I'm going to skip over it for now, but, Dick Cheney, even born in 1941. He was born on January 30th. If you write out George W. Bush, it equals 130. A number that I've talked about in my last few videos that I was getting shown by my newest old video copyright claim. And of course, 41 is in connection to Skull and Bones. If you write out Skull and Bones, it equals 41. 9/11 was all about 41. 9/11 happened on a date numerology of 41. Muslims equal 41. Al-Qaeda equals 41. Airplanes equal 41. Lots of 41 in regards to 9/11. And in regards to Nebraska, black shirts equals 41. They throw up the bones, like I said previously. They play in Memorial Stadium. Memorial equals 41. Red Inn equals 41. Husker fans equals 41. And there's other 41s. I can't think of them off the top of my head right now. But it also reminds me of George Bush's father, who was Bush 41 because he was the 41st president, also a member of Skull and Bones. Nebraska equals 35, 53, and 71. The 35th prime is 149, like Skull and Bones, the big way even. And all of the 9/11 stuff reminds me of the 112 stuff around Sam Foltz, because in other parts of the world, instead of using 911 as the emergency dialing code, they use 112. In regards to George Bush, something that doesn't involve the Nebraska Cornhuskers, at least as far as I know of, except for possibly the Houston connection. Houston equals 112. That's where Super Bowl 51 will be played. And, we're also going in the 112th World Series. George Bush used to be a partial owner of the Texas Rangers, another team that we have been talking about if the Houston Astros don't make the World Series. There was all kinds of retirement stuff in baseball. It was Prince Fielder, A-Rod, and Teixeira, and they all retired, and they all had connections back to the Rangers. and some other stuff. So just pointing it out that George Bush connected to that 7/6 date, and he also used to be the part owner of the Texas Rangers. And when I made this post, it was the day after or the night of Texas upsetting Notre Dame. I just want to point out the picture that they showed us on ESPN. This was the headline, and then when they showed the picture in the actual article, I mean, what are the two things that really stand out here? You can sort of see that. You can't see that, but you can definitely see Houston and 25, and the Super Bowl is on 2/5 this year in Houston. And this whole article was actually about Texas and how Houston upset Oklahoma and how Texas upset Notre Dame, and then also Alabama winning in Texas. I also want to point out in regards to LSU got upset by Wisconsin, and their quarterback was named Bart Houston. This game right here that they were showing us, it was even 5 months, 1 day before Super Bowl 51. So interesting picture that they would choose to show. The Super Bowl's in Texas. In regards to all of these Civil War type stuff, and I've talked a lot about assassinated presidents, JFK also assassinated in Texas. And I think the reason Texas is so significant is because in Gematria it equals 69. And this year Israel will be celebrating its 69th anniversary of being recognized. And they were created out of World War. And in regards to Nebraska equaling 71, if you write out World War III also equals 71. It's been 71 years since the end of World War II. So, who knows, just a thought. I wonder if that's why Texas is so significant in the coding, because of the 69. Also, Texas upset Notre Dame then, and the score totaled up to 97. Civil War, the big way, equals 97. Notre Dame, the Catholic school, Catholic equals 35 and 71, just like Nebraska. And whenever I think of Notre Dame, I always think of Rudy. And Rudy, of course, from the class of 1976. Rudy was also born on August 23rd, 23/8. If you write out Notre Dame Fighting Irish, it equals 238. This number was also a number I noticed in connection with 76. They kept telling us that Baton Rouge, Louisiana has 238,000 people. They shortened up the Philando Castile video to 2 minutes and 38 seconds. The Philadelphia train wreck also had 238 passengers. Also in regards to Kaepernick not standing and Dwayne Wade's cousin being shot supposedly, that was on the anniversary of the Bridgewater shooting that happened on the 238th day of the year. A whole lot more to that as well. Even Obama went to Omaha, Nebraska 238 days after the death of the police officer Kerry Orozco. We just wanted to point out that it has a connection to 76, the year that Rudy graduates at Notre Dame. Rudy in Gematria equals 68. Right now he's 68 years old. And of course in the movie he's played by Sean Astin, or Astin, however you say it. He was born in the year 71. He is 45 years old. And just think about that in regards to Rudy wearing number 45. His mom, Sean Astin or Astin, his mom also died earlier this year. It was Patty Duke. And I remember when she died, I talked about the significance of 69 in regards to World War and whatnot as well. World War III, if you write it out with the 3 I's, it equals 69. And then, of course, Texas equals 69. She died on a date numerology of 68. Rudy 68. Rudy equals 68. She was famous for portraying Helen Keller, who died in the year 68. 68 was the year George Bush graduated Yale Skull and Bones. It was the year 9/11 was made the emergency dialing code. It was the year that the World Trade Center construction began. It began on August 6th, which can be written as 6/8 of 68. Her real name, Anna Duke, equals 71 and 35, just like Nebraska, just like Catholic. Helen Keller equals 53. Nebraska with the S and K exception equal 53. Her full name, Anna Marie Duke, equals 117. Just like the Goonies, that's what I think of other than Rudy and Encino Man with Sean Astin. And, this was a big number around the Nebraska Cornhuskers. I didn't point out either that this guy right here, he went to UCLA, which was significant to Nebraska. That's who they played in the Foster Farms Bowl last year. And that it was all connected back to the Teen Wolf stuff that I talked about in regards to the NBA All-Star Week with the Teen Wolf, Zach LaVine, who won the Slam Dunk Contest, and Andrew Wiggins, who won the Rising Star Challenge MVP, and Russell Westbrook, who won the MVP of the All-Star Game. Kevin Love went to UCLA. Russell Westbrook went to UCLA. Zach LaVine went to UCLA. And, there's Nebraska Cornhusker stuff all in the background of the movie Teen Wolf. And then Nebraska ends up playing UCLA in the Foster Farms Bowl last year. Anyway, the real Rudy, the final game of Notre Dame's season that year that he was on the team, was in Miami on November 22nd. So just once again, the Miami, they won 32-9. And Sean Austin's mom dies on 3/29. Just interesting. It's also normally the 88th day of the year. This year it was the 89th. But just think about Obama going 88 years after Calvin Coolidge to Cuba. The game that Rudy was famous for was against Georgia Tech on 11-8. Think about that in regards to Teddy Bridgewater getting hurt against the Rams last year. The same weekend Nebraska upset Michigan State. What sticks out a lot, though, is they won 24-3. Teddy Bridgewater got injured for this year on the 243rd day of the year. His backup quarterback, Sean Hill, his full name equals 243. And another reason I brought that up was because Sam Bradford, the former Oklahoma player, now is replacing Bridgewater pretty much, where he went to the Vikings. In 1976, Oklahoma won the national championship. Then they beat Michigan. So just something interesting. Michigan is looking pretty good. They seem to have a very good team. They're connected to the Teen Wolf stuff. And it seems like a lot this year. We've seen a lot of redemption type stuff. So just something to think about. They also won in the Orange Bowl in Miami, of course. And their only loss that season was on 11-8 to Kansas. So also in this article about the Texas teams winning or whatever, they do this Charlie stuff. Charlie. And if you watched my old videos from last year, I talked about how everything seems to be connected to the royal family and Prince Charles possibly becoming King Charles. And, King Charles was the king during the English Civil War. There's just lots of Civil War type coding going on. But this article, I just wanted to point it out. They have the Charlie. So the purpose of this video was just to show more of the coding. And, it's just a follow-up video of what's been going on. I noticed some interesting things in regards to a lot of the stuff I keep talking about. And, how it all connects, that's what I'm still trying to piece together. But I definitely think there's something connected to Pope Francis's visit to Cuba, Obama's visit to Cuba, and how it connects to Miami. And all of these Civil War coding in regards to it, and then George Bush, born on 7/6. He's the 43rd president, which syncs up with Civil War, and his vice president was from Lincoln, Nebraska. There's just a big ring of interrelated things. Actually, let's look at Dick Cheney one more time, because Dick Cheney is he's actually related to George Bush even. He's related to Obama. He's related to a whole bunch of people here. Bush Jr., Sr., Obama, Jimmy Carter, LBJ, Truman, and they're all related through this guy right here, Maureen Duval, who died age 74, of course. The word Masonic equals 74. But he's also related to this guy here, Benjamin Pierce Cheney, and that's how he's related to Obama and... there was one other guy. Obama and Harry S. Truman are related through this guy, Benjamin Pierce Cheney. And This guy died exactly 121 years after or before Sam Foltz died. Sam Foltz was born on January 21st. This guy also born on August 12th, can be written as 12/8, a lot like 128. And his name in Gematria equals 128. The other guy who Cheney is related to all these people is Maureen Duval, who equals 128 in Gematria. And remember, this number I talked about is very important to Pennsylvania and Philadelphia. William Penn equals 128. Benjamin Franklin died on a date numerology of 128. Pennsylvania became a state on a date numerology of 128. So, whatever, gonna leave it at that. Just wanted to put some stuff out there to think about. Lots of information, lots of interrelated stuff. Have a good one.